It is clear.
Okay, right. So this is what generally a project management plan, right? So this is what generally PMP plan document was. The case study, which is that we have taken an example called point of sale system. Let me explain you what exactly POS system is all about to have a better understanding. POS is a kind of billing system which will be used on the retailing side. Whenever we are working on the retail segment, or whenever we go to the store, whatever the billing happens and all everything is all comes under the point of sale, right? So this is what generally POS system is all about. And the document, whatever we have taken as far as the project itself is concerned in reference to project management is all POS system. Now, generally, this is the template which point of sale system is all about. Let me explain you about what is that document consists of first, because high level understanding over the documentation is essentially required. So in this, the first thing about we have to discuss and as well as we need to know about the kind of oversight relating to the project. This is the first thing we do. So before the revision history, all that, right? After revision history, all that. Because revision history is nothing but document revision history. Because this is not something different from one organization to organization or templates. Even we see this even in when we are preparing business requirements documents and all everything, document revision history will be there. So document revision history explains us about what is that we have revised so far. That's what generally the importance of document revision history is. Means if there is any kind of changes in reference to the documentation we have made, everything will be there in the document revision history. Did you understand this, Dilip?
Yes, this is understood.
Right. So this is one thing. Next is the second one about preparing about the project management plan, whatever the project management planning is all about. So that is all something will be there. And about the document will be mentioned. This is what generally the first thing which normally we do. So whatever this about this document is a high level note about the kind of project management plan related process memorandum and all everything will be mentioned over that. Whereas the first one is important. This first 1.0 is something essentially important. In this 1.4, we are going to discuss about the overview of the project, right? So overview of the project may be of different things because we have to discuss about the executive summary, rationale of the project, what exactly this project is all about, whichever the project we will be taking. At the same time, we need to discuss about the funding and resources. This is where generally budget related things. So followed by this, what are the constraints, dependencies, what are the assumptions, right? Whatever the risk which is identified by us on a high level understanding, all these things comes under 1.0, right? This is the first thing. So once it is done, the next is about 2.0, which majorly discuss about the project authority, followed by the organization structure. Here we have to mention about the stakeholders, people who are stakeholders and what kind of stakeholders we have. That information we need to mention. Followed by this, the one more important point is 2.2. This is important. This is important being a project management team. This is important for us. So importance is project governance structure, right? So this project governance structure is required. Because even in the prior sessions also we have discussed when we are developing a project, when we are trying to understand the requirements of the customer, this is based upon the kind of structure of the organization, what they have, at the same time, what kind of goals and objectives they want to achieve finally. Am I right? Or?
Yes.
Is it clear?
So this is the client
project governance structure. Yeah, describing about the organizational structure, right? So role of the members, right? So at the same time, even project steering committee, people who are in the steering committee, those information. So all these will be mentioned under 2.2. The next thing, yeah, tell me please.
The 2.2 is both vendor and client, right?
Yes. Okay. Right. Yeah, next about the scope of the project, right? So whatever the scope of the projects and all everything will be mentioned, followed by the deliverables, etc. Right. So this is how generally the overview. I am going to explain it one by one to you. Okay, and these points we are going to discuss now. Now here it is the point, right? So for example, preparing project management plan, all that. This is relating to the oversight of the project about the documentation. See, this is all. Now here onwards we have to understand. This is where the understanding level. This is where generally we need to understand the executive summary of the project. This is where general rationale of the project. What exactly this project consists of. Overview of the project will be discussed over here, which is 1.1. Are you following?
Yes.
Right. So yeah. So this is where generally this one. Rationale of the project, right? So what was the rationale of the project is what we need to discuss over here, right? So this is what something which we have to be discussed, which we have to be known, right? So rationale of the project is what it is. So once the rationale of the project we have discussed all that, so means the detailed understanding over point of sale system, right? So at the same time, to whom are we going to develop this? So on a high level note, this executive summary will be discussed 1.1. So this is based upon the information, what is that we have collected from the customer perspective. That is what generally we do. So after that, funding resources. Funding resources means what is that source of funding, from where the funding will be released and for what amount. And is there any kind of associated restrictions do we have, or this is where generally we have to see. Understand? Clear?
Yes.
Right. So we need to know about the kind of funding resources here, right? So what are the funding resources we have and how much funding and how much budget was allocated, right? So because for every project, there is some amount of budget which will be allocated. So we must be knowing about what was the amount and what are the associated restrictions as well as retrievers and all everything. So that information we have to mention. This is where generally this will be majorly focusing on, right? So funding resources, etc., will be updated over here. Next here, we need to mention the description, the constraints. Now, generally, when we talk about the constraints, these constraints can be differentiated into different parts. For example, the constraints can be as follows, Dylan. Project constraints can be of different things. So the first constraint can be budget constraint. Okay. Second, technical constraint. Next, operational constraint and regulatory constraint. Is it clear to you, Dylan?
It is clear.
One is budget, second is technical, third is operational, fourth will be regulatory. Now, this is something we have to be focused more on the budget part, because let's say a customer, there are two different varieties, because in the beginning sessions, if you remember, I told you about pre-sales kind of concept was discussed with you, if you remember.
Yes.
Budget means sometimes customer will give us the budget. Within that budget, project has to be completed. This is one segment. The other segment is that sometimes customer won't give you any budget so far. No budget will be given by the customer. So we have to come up with the budget. Now, when we are talking about the budget, normally this budget again has two different things. So one is fixed budget or fixed amount. Second is FT. Okay, fixed amount, and second is FT. So how it is different? Fixed amount means, for example, depends on the requirement what customer has given. We made a understanding because customer is asking us to give us a proposal. In some situations, what we do depends on the complexity of the project, depends on the depth of the project. We give a fixed amount. Say, for example, $5,000. Let me put you this way, $5,000. So what we say here now, in $5,000, we are ready to complete the project. $5,000 based on the requirement what we have given. So we will ensure customer that in $5,000 mein kar sakte. In $5,000, we are ready to complete this project. but terms and conditions that, because we have to make this terms and condition. What was that? There should not be any deviation in requirements taken place further. If there is any deviations taken place, subject to condition. Understand? Clear?
And yeah, what is FTE?
I'll tell you that next. Do you understand this point? Fixed amount?
Yeah, just go over it one more time, please.
Yeah. See, fixed amount means, for example, there is a customer. Okay. So customer has given high level requirements to us. Customer has told us that provide me a budget, right? Provide me how much money you want to complete the solution. Based on the calculations we have made, etc. What we do first, for example, we said $5,000. $5,000, sure. So what is that we are ensuring the customer that in $5,000 we are ready to complete the project. Understood, Dylan? Right? $5,000 we are ready to complete the project based on the requirement they have given. But we make a clause here. What was the clause? This requirement should be this much. For that $5,000. If there is any deviation in requirements taken place further, subject to the discussion of acceptance. Do you understand this point? Yes, sir.
Understood.
What will happen now? For example, if there is not, this is where generally this point come into picture. This is where the scope comes into picture. Because if there is any possibility in terms of the scope was changed, what will happen? Automatically scope that will be reflected on the resources. Am I right? That will be reflected on the schedule also. Agree?
Agreed.
Right or not? So, if there is any fixed amount of money we propose to the customer, it must ensure that it has to be completed within that budget. That is what generally one proposal generally we give. If customer never say any budget, if we are proposing the budget, this is the condition, fixed amount. We are ensuring that in fixed amount, in this amount, we are ready to do it. This is fixed amount. Second is called FTE. Second is called FTE. FTE means full-time employment. Second FTE stands for full-time employment. What is FTE? Full-time employment means? Full-time employment means we say to the customer that to develop this project, let's say for example, we require 20 manpower. 20 manpower. Now we require one project manager in this. Okay. You may require 2 business analysts. Maybe 1 architect you require, solution architect, I can say. Maybe you may require 10 people as developers and UI designers in this, right? Both, clubbing both. 5 testing team. And 3 documentation. Okay. Now what we do, for every manpower, whatever the manpower, there will be some quotation will be given per hour basis. Per hour quotation will be quoted by us. For example, per hour, example, $100 per hour for a project manager, right? Maybe for a business analyst, maybe for example, $60. Understood, Dylan?
Understood.
Right? For example, architect are highly paid. I'm giving you the rough figure, $120 per hour. Hourly basis. Of course, negotiations will be taken place. So full-time employment. Full-time employment means to complete this particular project. What is that we say is that we require 20 manpower. Okay, 20 manpower. This is what generally the manpower required. And for this is what generally our quotation is. Normally, whenever we give quotation, always there is a possibility of negotiations will be taken place. Negotiations, finally, cost will be decided. Clear to you? Understand?
Clear.
Do you understand? This is what we call it as full-time employment. So there are 2 things. One is fixed amount. Second is FTE based. Fixed amount means fixed amount of money we said we are ready to deposit, or we are ready to take it, right, for the fixed amount. Second, FTE base means full-time employment. Full-time employment means for a particular project to develop these many manpower, and this is what our cost. So whenever we are doing these constraints, we have to see that also, right? So budget constraints we have to see, because whatever the work are we going to do, please do remember there is a possibility of effect which will be impacted on the scope. Scope will be deviated sometimes. There is a possibility that scope will be deviated. Resource will also get deviated. Schedules will also get deviated.
Mhm.
Right?
Right.
Right. So when we are talking about the constraints, why are these constraints we have taken? We have taken scope into account. Why I have taken scope into an account? Why we have taken scope? Because if there is any changes requirements comes place, automatically the scope will deviate. Don't you think this is a constraint to us?
Right.
First point. Second, due to the changes in the requirements which given by the customer, scope has deviated, effort also increases. If effort increases, you require some additional manpower. This resource may be a manpower resource, may be a technical resource. Don't you think this is a constraint?
Right. Yes.
Point number 2. At the same time, resource in continuation to that schedule. Automatically, schedule will also be deviated because scope has changed. It will be reflected on the schedule also. Is it clear to you? No?
It is clear, yes.
Right. So this is where and what generally we talk about the constraints. So constraints means this. This is what generally constraints. So we have to mention the constraints as well. This is also important. Right?
It is right, yes.
Right. This is one thing, constraints. Next, dependencies. Normally, whenever we talk about dependencies, whenever we see about dependencies, dependencies can be anything, Thilan. For example, there will be some project. If you take healthcare projects or if you take banking projects, the applications, whatever a customer is using, all these applications were interconnected. Yes, sir.
Right.
These applications were interconnected. Am I right? Interconnected. So interconnection means there will be an interconnect among the applications. If there are any changes you are making, you have to make the changes also. For example, let me give you an example from the point of sale system. If you want to see anything on screen of POS, make sure it has to be connected with inventory management. Am I right? Yes or no?
Yeah, say that again, please.
For example, a person wants to do billing on the billing counter, right? He is using point of sale system. What is that he do? Whenever a customer has given the product, he scan it.
Right.
Whenever it's scanned, automatically product name followed by the unit price will be displayed on the screen.
Correct, yes.
How was it happened? Because there is a dependency in reference to the point of sale system, which is depending on the inventory management system, right? So inventory through inventory management system, this POS is accessing the data, stock position. Yes, agreed?
Yes.
You're accessing the data from the inventory management. So it's not only developing a point of sale system is not only enough, but we have to see the dependencies also. What was the dependency here? If you are making any corrections on the inventory management system, that will be reflected on the POS.
Right.
Okay, so you have to make sure when you're developing a point of sale system, you have to make sure where these dependencies will connect with. It is connecting with, for example, if it's a POS system, let me tell you. For example, there is a POS system. Okay. POS system is there. So this POS system is connecting with two more things. One is inventory management. Second was payroll management, payroll system. Okay. So these two are the dependencies.
So the first one is
Inventory management. Second is payroll management system. These two are dependencies. Right. For example, if you are making any changes in the inventory management system, that will be reflected on the POS while you are accessing it. Agree?
right.
First point. Second point of this payroll system. Payroll system means employees. Who is accessing POS system? The employee of our organization is accessing it. On how they access it, they access based on the ID number. How you got this ID number? This ID number we have got based on the payroll application what it has, because every employee will have an employee. So if there is any corrections, any adding or any deleting, editing and all, everything was made on the payroll, automatically that will be reflected on the POS.
So basically, we have three different systems, right? One is inventory management, and there is payroll system, and then there's point of sales. They all basically communicate.
Interconnected.
Yes.
Right. So, for example, I will draw something. I will show you. Let's say, for example, for example, here is a point of sale system. Okay. Here is a point of sale system. So point of sale system will be used for the billing purpose. Am I right? Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Now, from where you are accessing point of sale system data, right? Because point of sale system itself doesn't have any data. From where you are accessing this you are accessing from an inventory management system. Right? You're accessing it. So you're accessing the data from the inventory management system. Yes, sir.
Right.
Right. Now, who is accessing this? This POS system is being operating by an individual, an employee, whom we call it as biller. Hum bolte biller. Biller is operating it. Am I right?
Right.
Biller is operating the point of sale system. So where this biller is an employee. So where this data will be registered, stored, this employee data will be stored in the payroll management system. Am I right?
Right.
Right? Because this person is relating to this. So this biller is a person who is a payroll where he'll be registered and he'll be logging. How is he logging here? Is he logging based on the employee identity? If he's an employee of the organization, then only he is eligible to log in. Right? Yes, sir. Right? So this point of sale system is accessing by payroll system, and payroll system is getting accessed by the point of sale systems. Agreed? Clear to you now? Understand?
Yes, sir.
Understood? Right. So this is where generally we talk about this. Right. So this is where generally we talk about dependencies. Clear to you, Dylan? Right.
It is clear, yes.
Right. So dependency, these descriptions and all, right. So all these things will be mentioned over here. Next, assumptions. You have to make some assumptions out of it. For example, assumption as follows. What was the assumption here? What was the assumption? System will integrate with TRD and MVD computing infrastructure. For example, there was some infrastructure which is called TRD and MVD infrastructure. whatever the POS system are we talking about, this will be integrated with this computing infrastructure. This is what customer is saying. This is an assumption. Assume that. Second point. What was the second assumption here? POS hardware equipment will work with existing MVD 2.1. MVD 2.0 is an existing infrastructure which customer has. So whatever the POS system is working, this is based upon the hardware equipment which MVD is having.
Correct, yes. So this project management plan is built by vendors PM, right?
Project management plan, we have to make it here because there are two kind of people will be there. See, for example, let me explain in the paint. For example, I'll explain here. For example, customer, right? Client. Client will have their own ITT. Consists of project manager, technical team, BA, etc. Am I right?
Right.
Next, even vendor means a software company. Vendor will also have the same. So even project manager was here, project manager is also here. Yes, sir. Here is a project manager. You have a project manager here also. When you're talking about project management planning, who is doing it? Vendor side person is doing it. Based on what? Based on the requirement which was given by the client. You have to give, because you are developing a project, you have to prepare a project plan for your customer. Understood, Dylan? Clear?
You're saying clients or customers?
Client or a customer. For example, customer is coming up with some requirement. Who has to give a plan? You have to give a plan. You are a vendor. You have to give a plan to the customer. Yes. Yes, sir.
Right.
So I'm teaching you.
Right.
Who is giving the documents here? I'm giving the documents.
Right.
Who has explained the course content? I have to explain the course content because you are my client. You are my customer.
Right.
Right. What is that you want? I understood. Against to that, I have shared something. Right. I have showed this is what the content. This is what the duration. Right. These are the documents. This is the timelines. Who has given all this information? I am the vendor. I myself has given it.
Right.
On what basis I have given this? Based on the requirement I have taken from you. Who is required? Which requirement? Your need. Whatever the need you have, based on that I am doing something to you. Right? I am providing some training. Understand to you, Dylan?
Yeah, so a vendor's PM will prepare all that, right?
Absolutely. Right. So this is where generally these assumptions, all these things comes into picture. Followed by this risk part. This I am going to discuss tomorrow. Okay. How this risk will be taken place and all of things. This I'll be discussing in tomorrow session. Clear? Understood now?
Yes.
You're following, right? Any confusion?
I am following, yes, yes.
This part I'll discuss because this risk is important from this onwards. This structure is also governance structure. This is also important. This governance structure I'll be discussing in tomorrow session. Clear?
Right. Do you have 2 minutes, Raj?
Please. Always.
Yeah, now slowly I'm understanding everything. So the purpose of me
1 minute. 1 minute. Let me